When you stop chasing, the first cracks begin to show in what she believed was an unshakable dynamic. For so long, she operated under the assumption that no matter how far she pulled away, you'd always be there to bridge the gap. It wasn't necessarily a malicious calculation, just an ingrained expectation, reinforced by history. Every time she distanced herself, you were the one who reached out. Every silence was broken by your voice. Every rift was mended by your hands. You became the constant, the stabilizer, the one who kept the connection alive, even when she let it go slack. But now, something has shifted. Your silence isn't a tactic or a game, it's the natural result of exhaustion, realizing that you've been the only one putting in the work. In that absence, that sudden stillness disrupts everything. She thought she held the power because she dictated the rhythm when to engage, when to withdraw, when to test your loyalty. Yet now, for the first time, she's met with nothing but quiet. No pleading texts, no desperate attempts to fix what wasn't yours to fix, no emotional labor to keep the illusion alive. What she doesn't yet realize is that her sense of control was never real, it was borrowed. It existed only because you allowed it, because you chose to show up again and again. Now that you've stopped, the foundation starts to tremble. She may not admit it at first, may even convince herself that she doesn't care, but the doubt creeps in, asterisk, why isn't he chasing me this time? The question lingers, unanswered, and with it comes a dawning awareness. The dynamic she relied on was never hers to command. It was yours to sustain. Your silence isn't anger or punishment. It's simply the absence of effort that was never matched. And in that void, she's left to confront the truth that what she believed was her power was actually your choice. Choices can be revoked. Her ego had grown comfortable in the certainty of your pursuit. Like a well-worn script, she knew how the scenes would play out. She could pull back, create distance, even withhold affection, and you would step forward to fill the void every time. This unspoken dance reinforced her belief that she held the upper hand, that your emotional investment guaranteed her security in the relationship. She never had to question her position because you were always there. A constant presence reaffirming her worth through your actions. But now your silence disrupts that familiar rhythm. Where there was once reassurance, there is only stillness. Where there were once your words bridging the gap, there is now an unsettling quiet. This absence doesn't just leave space, it forces her to occupy it in ways she never had to before. Without your reactions, without your attempts to mend what she fractured, her ego is left without its usual validation. It's one thing to take someone's presence for granted when they're always there. It's another to suddenly realize that presence was never guaranteed. At first, she might rationalize it. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you're playing games. But as time stretches without your familiar pursuit, the questions start creeping in. Asterisk, why isn't he fighting for me anymore? Did I push too far? Was I wrong about how much he cared? These aren't just passing thoughts. They're cracks in the narrative she's built about herself and about you. May even test the waters a half-hearted message, a vague social media post, anything to elicit the response she's used to receiving. But if you remain steady in your silence, the truth becomes harder to ignore. You're no longer feeding the dynamic that kept her ego secure. The unsettling part for her isn't just the lack of attention. It's the realization that her power in the relationship was never inherent. It was something you gave her by choosing to stay, to chase, to prioritize her, even when she didn't prioritize you. Now that you've stopped, she's left facing an uncomfortable mirror. Your silence doesn't just remove your voice, it amplifies hers. It's forcing her to listen to the parts of herself she's been avoiding. And that's when the real unraveling begins. The moment you stop begging is the moment you reclaim something far more valuable than her. Attention, your own self-respect. For too long, you operated under the illusion that persistence proved your worth. That if you just tried harder, loved louder, or explained better, she would finally see what she was taking for granted. But real love isn't a negotiation. Isn't earned through emotional labor or rewarded to whoever tolerates the most disrespect. Your silence now isn't coldness. It's the quiet dignity of a man who has decided he will no longer audition for a role he was never meant to play. There's a profound shift that happens when you stop seeking closure from someone who never intended to give it. You begin to realize how much of yourself you poured into a bottomless cup, how many excuses you made for breadcrumbs when you deserved the whole meal, the texts you drafted but never sent, the nights you spent replaying conversations the way. You twisted yourself into shapes just to fit into her life. None of it was love. It was fear. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of not being enough. Fear of facing the truth that some people will only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. Now, your silence is the antidote to that fear. It's not about punishing her or playing hard to get. It's about finally hearing your own voice again. Without the noise of chasing, you start noticing the ways you betrayed yourself to keep her comfortable. The times you swallowed your pride. The boundaries you let slide. The gut instincts you ignored because hope was louder than wisdom. That's the real cost of begging. It's not just the rejection you face from her, but the rejection you inflict on yourself every time. You prioritize someone who treats you like an option. So let this silence be your homecoming. Let it teach you that the most powerful thing a man can do is walk away, not with drama, not with grand gestures, but with the quiet certainty of someone who knows his worth isn't up for debate. The right people won't make you chase them. They'll meet you halfway, and they'll stay. Until then, your peace is the only prize worth chasing. The fantasy she clung to wasn't about you. It was about the version of you she could always return to. A safety net woven from your patience. A character in her story who'd remained frozen in place while she explored other plot lines. She took comfort in knowing you'd be there when she needed validation, when boredom struck, when the thrill of new attention faded. Your constancy was the backdrop against which she could play out her uncertainties. Because no matter how far she wandered, the script demanded you'd still be waiting when the curtain fell. But your silence rewrites the entire production suddenly. The stage is empty. The lines she rehearsed, the half apologies, the breadcrumb defection, the testing push Shan Puliko into nothingness. No reaction means no confirmation of her desirability, no fuel for the drama that made her feel alive. She's left staring at a closed door she assumed would always be open, realizing too late that doors swing both ways. The mental reel starts spinning. Was it when she canceled plans last minute again? When she dismissed your feelings as overreactions? When she expected forgiveness without ever offering change? Each memory hits differently now that the consequences are real instead of theoretical. This is where the fantasy fractures. Not with shouting, not with grand exits, but with your absence becoming permanent. She'll tell herself you're being petty, that you'll cave eventually until the days stack up and the silence holds. That's when the haunting begins. She rediscovers old photos, rereads conversations where you poured out your heart while she replied in monosyllables, passes places you used to go together. The weight of what she lost doesn't arrive as a lightning bolt, but as a slow dawn, the understanding that what felt like your endless patience was actually finite. And she spent the last of it without realizing it was the last, the cruelest. Truth, she might miss you now, but she didn't miss you then. Fantasy loves potential, but reality demands action. You've chosen reality. Let her live with the ghost of what she didn't appreciate when it was flesh and blood. The silence after walking away becomes fertile ground for truth to finally take root. In the absence of noise, no arguments to win, no feelings to soothe, no explanations to craft, you begin seeing with brutal clarity what love's intoxication had blurred. The red flags you rationalized as complicated now wave unmistakably bright. The uneven effort you called busy schedules reveals itself as simple neglect. The anxiety you mistook for passion, just the tremors of an unstable connection. Distance doesn't just provide perspective, it surgically removes the lies you told yourself to keep hoping for her. The same space holds a different reckoning. Your absence becomes a mirror reflecting back all the unearned security she took for granted. She starts noticing the hollow spaces you once filled not with grand gestures, but with the quiet, essential things. How you remembered her coffee, order during morning chaos, how your steadiness anchored her storms. How you asked, "How was your day?" and actually listened. These were the invisible threads she didn't notice until they snapped. Substitutes parade through her life new attention. Fresh validation, but none replicate the depth you offered. Their meals of candy when she'd grown accustomed to nourishment. Yet this clarity isn't about her awakening. It's about yours. Every day of silence strengthens a muscle she never knew you had. The ability to value yourself more than potential.
Ow.
You stop romanticizing what could have been and start respecting what actually was. The late-night texts that left you drained. The canceled plans that became routine. The unilateral decisions she made seen clearly now. They weren't bumps in the road. They were the road. And you're no longer willing to travel it. Meanwhile, her attempts to reconnect, if they come, will feel different. Not because she changed, but because you have. Where once her slightest attention would have sent you sprinting back, now you observe it with detached curiosity. The "I miss you" texts, the sudden interest in your life, the uncharacteristic vulnerability there, not the breakthrough you once hoped for. They're the panic of someone realizing the safety net has vanished. You recognize this not with bitterness, but with the calm of a man who's learned the difference between love and the fear of losing it. The greatest gift of this silence? It reveals who you both truly are without the drama. You discover your capacity for peace. She confronts her addiction to chaos. You learn you can thrive without her validation. She learns not all wounds can be sweet-talked into healing. When the final curtain falls on this chapter, there's no explosive finale, just the quiet understanding that some loves aren't meant to last. They're meant to burn away what was weak, so only what's strong remains. You walk away not to teach her a lesson, but because you've finally learned your own. Never stay where your absence wouldn't be felt. The right love won't require you to vanish to be seen.